Hello everyone, I'll be doing a little overview of the Lizardmen faction overview. Been playing it quite a lot in the old world and I'm happy to share what I found. So the goal of this video is to tell you some things about the units, what units I think are good, which are viable, and which are the stingers that we also have in the Lizardmen book. I've ranked them in 5 tiers, with 5 axes being top tier, 4 axes being competitively viable, so a unit that I think you could take in a tournament while not being weird about it. 3 axes is units that are sometimes viable in tournaments, while double X and 0x units I consider weak or even like unplayable units in any circumstance. I have some assumptions about the games I play for my rankings. Most of the competitive games in the old world are played in 2K victory point based games. So that means that you play a 2000 point game and that you do not have any additional rules like objectives or stuff like that. So I assume you just have kill points or something very close to kill points. If that's not the case, rankings could very much change. The general outline is the same, but because of things I'll talk about later, it's important to assume a 2000 point game that's based on victory points. I'm going to assume that there's a rule of 6 for core and a rule of 3 for everything else. There have been a lot of different rulings for the old world, but like big online tournaments like Square Based Open have been using rules like this. I'm also assuming that there's no heavy additional comping. I've seen some tournaments running rules like only having one behemoth, only having one level 4, stuff like that. I assume that for the games that you're playing for this tier list, nothing like that is really relevant. What's really happening in your game. So, what do I think about the army? I think the army has got the strongest skirmishers in the game in skink skirmishers. They're absolutely great. I'd say we have some decent monsters with standouts like Carnosaurs being very strong. A thing that I see about the army is that it's really important to invest every point you have, so the 1000 point in character allotment. I think any list invest in a 2000 point game, investing less than 900 points in characters for Lizardmen, it's just a mistake. Anything above that, you're really often, I would want to spend more than 1000 points. So basically with every list I write, it's really edging up to that 1000 point. So I think that's a really important thing to think about when building a Lizardman army, that the character allotment is the strongest part of your army. You should really think carefully about how you want to invest it. We have an army that has weak infantry, weak magic, sadly, even though the Slann Mage priests are supposed to be really awesome in the lore, they're really not. And we also have really weak cavalry. So we got decent shooting, good monsters, but the other things in the army are kind of lackluster. There's only one army-wide rule. It's cold-blooded, and it means that you roll 3d6 for panic, fear, and terror checks, and you discard the highest to see what happens. It's a decent rule. Doesn't really come up much, but it's better than nothing. So if we go to the first unit, what do I think about it? The first unit I'm going to talk about is the Slann Mage Priest. You see I rated 4 axes. I think it's a pretty competitively viable unit. I would describe it as a necessary evil of your army list. It's sadly very expensive. It's about 100 points more expensive than other wizards, and for those 100 points you do not really get any better casting, but you get most wizards are like toughness 3 or 4, 3 wounds. Instead of that you get 5 wounds, toughness 4, you get a 5 up ward save in build, and you get a fly move of 8. But really honestly, I would like to spend those 100 points differently, but sadly you can't, because it's the only model in the army which has a leadership 9. It's the only model which has level 4 casting. The 24-inch dispel bubble is really important. So because of those two things, the leadership 9 and the level 4 dispelling, I really think you need a Slann, but I really don't think you kind of want one. I think it's too expensive for what it does, and it gives you things that you do not actually want, namely being extra defenses. You'd rather have the rest of your army defending him rather than him having defensive stats himself. There are 5 lores you can take with a Slann. Elementalism, Battle Magic, Illusion, High Magic, and Necromancy. I think the strongest choice is generally Elementalism. Plague of Rust is a very strong spell when combined with Poison Shooting. Poison Shooting, it automatically wounds, so the target toughness doesn't really matter. The armor save very much does. So if you're shooting with poison attacks on things with a good armor save, it generally just doesn't do that much, because yes, of course you wound, but then you don't go through the armor save, so it doesn't really get you very much. And Plague of Rust really benefits that, because if you reduce their armor save, you give them a lot of wounds. Well, it's a lot of models dying. That's what you want, right? Behind that, Travel Mystical Pathways, also a really strong spell, especially with the Bastiladon. So I think it just has good synergy with the rest of the army. There are really no really sucky spells, so you can't really go wrong with Elementalism. Battle Magic is also just a decent choice. Fireball is good. Pillar of Fire is very good. And there's a trick you can do with Terradons, which I will get into later with Arcane Urgency. But especially because of the synergy between Plague of Rust with Skinks and Travel Mystical Pathways with Bastiladons. You can just teleport the Bastiladons away, get them to points where you can shoot. The synergy with the army is better with Elementalism, I say, than with Battle Magic, but it's still a decent choice. Illusion Magic is kind of interesting. There's a combination which you can do. You can make a Slann Ethereal with Higher State of Mind, which is one of the best upgrades you can buy for it, basically anyway, because it's one of the only good ways you can keep him alive. And if you go Illusion together with a Lore Familiar and something like a good close combat weapon, you can make an Ethereal Fly 8 monster. Which is a lot of like strong characters actually invest a lot of their defense, so they actually have like something like a great weapon or a lance to do damage. And it's kind of sort of like a fun combo to try to use a Higher State of Mind, a Lore Familiar, and then a strong close combat along with Illusion and Doppelganger to do some damage to people. Slann is also, it has 5 wounds, it has Close Order, and you can make him a Battle Standard Bearer. So that's also 2 static combat res. If your opponent cannot hit you because you're ethereal and you have 2 static combat res, that's a pretty good baseline. You can like pretty keep up enemy units like that pretty well. So that's like another build you can go. Sadly, when the FAQ came, they changed the Slann Mage Priest from just being infantry to being a monstrous creature. So their movement is a lot less. He doesn't have any. He doesn't have 360 vision anymore. You cannot move him freely. So that combo's gotten a little bit worse, but it's like a fun little thing you can do. I'd say that High Magic and Necromancy are just pretty bad choices for a Slann generally. One of the best spells in High Magic is Walk Between Worlds that makes you and the unit ethereal. You cannot put the Slann in any units, so like the best spell is kind of wasted on him. He's already ethereal if you buy Higher State of Mind for him, which you kind of should. So like that's one of sort of the best spells in the lore wasted. So that's just not great. And Necromancy has a lot of leadership debuffs. The undead armies have got some strong synergy with that, but Lizardmen don't really do anything with that, so there's no real point I have found to go Necromancy. I think the base loadout is going Lore Familiar to make sure you have Travel Mystical Pathways in Plague of Rust. You make him ethereal to make him survive. Remember, he doesn't get Lookout Sir because he's a monstrous creature. You cannot hide him with infantry units like Skinks or Saurus Warriors. So I think you kind of need to pay the 60 points for Higher State of Mind to keep him safe. And then you just go Elementalism or Battle Magic to just have some strong spells. As I said before, you can also go the Lore Familiar route for a strong other build. Ruby Ring of Ruin is also pretty decent on him if you have the points. I don't think you often will, as I'll get into later, but it's a decent choice. And from all the other masteries of the Ancient, Becoming Cogitation is the best. It's 50 points, makes it so your dispel is 3 inches more, which is kind of nice because you can put it in within dispel range of the enemy, but they cannot dispel you. It's kind of funny, but it precludes Higher State of Mind, and I really think you just need Higher State of Mind to keep your Slann alive. It's a necessary army in the list. I'd rather have him to be cheaper or have some way to make him actually cast spells any better, but it's not the case. I still think you need to run one though to keep your army functioning. Also going to say something about the Lizardmen specific spells. Apotheosis is really bad. It only targets infantry or cavalry. You should not, or infantry and cavalry characters, that is. I don't think you should run any. You want a Slann and you want big monsters in your 1000-point precious character slots. So it's just bad because you can't target the things you want. Monsoon is pretty cute. It's a big template. It moves, big template work. It moves every turn, and if it moves over enemy units, they become wet, so they get -1 to hit when doing shooting attacks. The main thing is that it blocks line of sight, so it's kind of like a bad pillar of crystal. And so you can use it to stop some charges, maybe if you roll a lucky hit. But generally, I don't think you want any of the Lizardmen Lore Familiar spells. Are pretty bad. This is also why I think Lore Familiar is extra good for Lizardmen. Because you sort of have no good cop-out spells from your lore, from your race specific spells. So you just really want to pick a lore and get the spells that you want. Those being Travel Mythical Pathways and Plague of Rust, and just not really mess with anything else. Then onto our first really good unit, Scar Veterans on Carnosaurs. They're frankly the best monsters we have. They have Swift Stride, toughness 6, strength 7 attacks. The monster itself has D3 wounds against monsters, which is really good. It's like the only thing we have that can really put a dent in enemy dragons. When the Carnosaur does a wound, you become frenzy. It's actually very annoying because that means you can always overrun. What quite often happens is that you toss your Carnosaur into something, it goes crazy, it eats something, you kill it, and then you rather like reform it or not overrun it because the target is already dead or flees off the table, but you have to keep running. So it's annoying, but there's not much you can do about it. I think there are generally 2 really good loadouts for him. I think you always want to go Great Weapon on him to get strength 7 attacks, 5 of them with Furious Charge for the riders. It's really good. And the best build is you go Meteoric Iron, Talisman of Protection. The beast only has heavy armor, so you're not getting any better than a 5-up anyway, because you want to have that great weapon, as I said. And a Talisman of Protection for a 5-up gives like around 330 point, very cheap. There are like 10 strength 7 attacks coming out of that. You have a 5-up armor save, which you can always roll, a 5-up ward save, which you can always roll. Toughness 6 is really good to protect you against a lot of things. I think that's just sort of the go-to good build. Another good build is instead of the Armor of Meteoric Iron and Talisman of Protection, you go Glyph Necklace. So this is a specific item which gives you a 5-up ward save and a -2 magic resistance. 5-up ward save, once again, is just really good. Basically, this guy's only his toughness 6 makes it so you like low AP attacks that are strength 3 or strength 4 just do not go through your toughness because they need 6s to wound you, and like the high strength attacks often also have high AP, so then your ward save becomes really good because then you can just ignore that cannon shot that's coming at you with your 5-up ward save. And -2 magic resist, like people are going to be casting spells on them. These guys are your best threats, and so having the -2 is like really nice to have in a pinch. So my basic loadout is you get a Slann, you get a Lore Familiar, you give him Ethereal, and then you get these 2 Scar Veterans Carnosaurs, and that's like 999 points, so you're almost spending all of your character allotment. You have like a really, like 2 guys that can really go hunting for stuff, and your Slann Mage to keep the rest of your battle line together to defend you against enemy magic. I'll go on to Oldbloods and Carnosaurs. What you get for 50 more points when compared to a Scar Veteran is you get an additional weapon skill, an additional wound, and an additional attack. The thing is that, as I said, your 1000 points of character allotment are how you spend it is a very important choice. And those 50 points of +1 weapon skill, +1 wound, +1 attack, you can just invest them better elsewhere. Once again, this is why I said it's really important to keep in mind that this is a 2000 point review. If you want to go, for example, 1500 points, I can totally see like you going a Slann and an Oldblood because you cannot fit 2 Scar Vets on Carnosaurs in there. Then you can do like a Slann and an Oldblood on a Carnosaur. And then you could go something like an Ogre Blade, a Shield, and a Talisman Protection for a 4-up armor save, and like Strength 7. And once again, you strike on initiative, and you go D3 wounds against everything as well on your Oldblood. That's a pretty good idea. But in 2000 point setups, because you want 2 guys in Carnosaurs preferably, and you also want your Slann, you just can't really fit your Oldblood in. You just don't have the space for it. So it's just not great. Because if you it implies if you do not if you want to run an Oldblood in 2000 points, you do not have 2 other good characters decked out. So he's a sign that your army construction is just not going very well. Regarding all other Saurus heroes on foot, gold ones, they're just too expensive for what they bring. They're very slow. Gold ones are pretty bad because of stupidity and because they don't really give you much. So you need the toughness of a Carnosaur to keep them alive and actually have them to do their damage. So frankly, I don't think you should run any. The Skink priests on Stegadons are pretty decent. The only way to get better casting in the book is to have 2 Engines of the Gods. Sadly, an Engine of the God on an Ancient Stegadon is 255 points, and it's in the rare section, so you cannot bring 2 in your rare section. So if you want to have 2 Engines of the Gods, to have +1 to cast for everything which is close to the Engine of the Gods, you need to bring a Skink priest on a Stegadon, which I think is a decent idea. I mean, +1 to cast is pretty nice. But once again, it's 350 points to give him Engine of the Gods and to make him level 2, and that makes it hard to fit in your Slann and your other Carnosaur. But you can totally do it. It's fine. It's good to put a glyph necklace or talisman protection on him to give him some more protection. The downside of it all is that a Skink Priest is only web skill 2. You look at his weapon skill to hit back on him. So your big expensive monster is web skill 2 when hitting back, so everything hits him on 3s. And he doesn't have Swift Stride, so it's pretty slow, which is all very annoying. One trick you can use, one rule we have, is when you have a Slann and a Skink Priest, you can use the Skink Priest once per turn as the place where you measure distances from your Slann. And that makes it so you can evade enemy dispels. So you can just run your Skink Priest forward, cast your spell from your Slann, which is still outside of 24 inches of the enemy dispel range. Like your Skink Priest can be within 24 inches and like have range on spells, but as long as your Slann is outside, you can still cast an important spell like Plague of Rust or something. Which you can. So there's some nice synergy there. The main thing is, as I said, like evading dispels. It's not really about the extra range, even though it's also a nice benefit. But because I think just the optimal build is 2 Carnosaurs and a Slann, I don't really think there's much space for Skink Priest on Stegadons. Another thing which you could go is Skink Chiefs on Stegadons. It's actually pretty high on these guys at the beginning of the book. Once again, because they're 7 wounds, toughness 6, they're decent with a glyph necklace or talisman of protection. But basically what they do is they bring a ton of strength 5 attacks with web skill 4. They're pretty slow, they do not have Swift Stride. They sadly do not get any AP on impact hits anyway, and no AP against other behemoths. Makes it so they just do jack shit against like big star dragons or stuff like that. Things that strong other lists will be bringing on you, and they just with strength 5 and no AP against them, you just don't do anything. They have a lot of like impact hits, stomp attacks. They're a little bit faster in infantry, so they're really good at mopping up infantry. But the thing is, nobody's really running infantry, so I think they counter something that do not really need countering right now, infantry. So they're a decent unit, and in another meta I could see you running them because they're cheap and they're pretty decent for what they bring, but their damage profile just doesn't line up with the things you need fixing right now. Skink Chiefs on Terradons and Rippers can also be kind of cute. They are decent with a Ruby Ring of Ruin. They can fly around. They have a movement of 10. They can be very fast. You can give them a Piranha Blade, which is a Lizardman specific item, which has multiple wounds too, which really makes it so that they can kill wizards very well. But they're like they have a low toughness, low armor save. Low amount of wounds, like 2 or 3 wounds. They just die to a stiff breeze, and they also make it so, once again, that you cannot in 2000 points run your 2 Carnosaurs and your Slann, which you want to do. So there can be cute little tech pieces, but I don't really think they have a home in an optimized Lizardman list. If you want to run chiefs or priests on foot, I just wouldn't do that. Level 1 or level 2 wizards are really bad in the game currently anyway, because they just get overpowered by level 4s. They have a lot less dispel range, and because of the pluses in casting and dispelling level 4s get, you just won't get any spells through. And a chief on foot, there's just no real build for him that does anything. He's still at 40 points, but there's there's nothing really useful for him to do. And once again, it's in your very important character allotment space, where you want to invest it into something else. Then I'm going to go through the normal units. The first unit I'll go through is Temple Guard. I think Temple Guard are decent. I think the main thing they have is Stubborn plus Shield Wall. So for people who do not know how that works, like the first time you have to make a break test, you can use Stubborn to make it so you always do a fallback in good order, even if you would normally not be allowed to. And Shield Wall says that the first time you do a fallback in good order, you can just give ground. So you do not have to roll for anything, just the first time they would you have to roll a break test. Instead, they just go back 2 inches. This makes it so it's pretty nice to anchor a battle line around. So if you make it so you shove them forward, make it so something has to charge them, and then you can always know that they just go 2 inches back, and you can put your Carnosaurs or something else on the flanks to really mess up someone's day. So it's a pretty decent combo. The Guardian's rule also makes it so that when your Slann is within 3 or 6 inches of them, they can on a 2-up, he can transfer hits to them. So it's like sort of a character protection rule you get against them, which is pretty nice. But I believe the main benefit it has is that the Guardian special rule makes it so when your Slann is within 3 inches of your Temple Guard, they all get to accept and refuse challenges like champions. So with that, you can hold up an enemy like 600-700 point Star Dragon quite a bit, which is kind of nice. Their main problem is Initiative 1. They're very slow. You're not often charging with them. They're pretty expensive, so you can't really take a lot of them and like get a big frontage out of them. So really often, like 3 or 4 guys from your front end are going to be dead. You can't really use your pretty decent stat line to hit back. So don't expect them to do any damage really, but expect them to maybe hold a charge, hold a dragon, or like annoy a dragon for a little bit, and to soak some hits for your Slann. And they can be pretty fine at that. Saurus Warriors, on the other hand, while Temple Guard have some opportunities to be used, Saurus Warriors are just bad. And the worst thing about it is that you have to take them in your army. It's literally required. You need to run 1 unit of Saurus Warriors, which absolutely sucks. It's the thing I hate the most about the old world and about this army. I would call them the compulsory evil, because they literally are. And everything that sort of makes Temple Guard decent, namely that they have Stubborn and Shield Wall and that they have Guardians, they do not have. So Initiative 1, once again, if you play against good units, if there are units like Demi Knights or Pegasus Knights or like dragons ramming into them, the front rank will get wiped out, they will not do anything, and then they will die because they're Initiative 1. I've heard some players that are like, oh, well, they're not that bad, like they hit up on like enemy spearmen or like enemy swordsmen, and I'm like, yeah, sure, if your enemies are bringing like spearmen or swordsmen, I guess they can do something about it, but against good lists that bring Pegasus Knights and like undead with like all their heals and fast units like dragons, they just don't work. They get progressively worse the better your opponents become. Right now I see them as a walking sack of victory points that I have to hand to the opposing dragon, because a dragon can just hone in on them, you cannot really run away from it, and then they die and you just give up a ton of points. I often just run a 10-man unit with Shield Wall and a champion for them, and I just fill out my core with them, and I really hope at some point I do not have to play this unit anymore because I hate it. From the depths of Saurus Warriors, we now go to Skink skirmishers, which are absolutely fantastic. I think they are the best skirmishers in the game. They're way too cheap for what they bring. I think you run them at 10 or 12 man units. You run as many as you can in the comp you can. Like for 5 points per model, their poison shooting is absolutely fantastic. They just do way too much damage for what you think you do. You can run 12 inch with them and shoot 12 inch of them. So even though their range is pretty short, their threat range is pretty big. Skirmishes means you can put them in all sorts of little corners, weave them around stuff, run them out of charge ranges, be very annoying for your opponent. I really think you want to go javelins and shields. Blowpipes makes it so your opponent more expensive, but you have to not run your shield anymore. So instead of a 5-up armor save, which is really good for a 5-point model, you go to a 6-point model without that 5-up armor save, you go down to a 6-up. But the biggest thing you lose is that you cannot march and shoot anymore. So instead of 24 inches threat range, you go down to 18 inches, which is a big difference. Like the big upside blowpipes have is that they have multiple shots, but the Blitzkill 3 means you cannot really use that much anyway. It's only really good on standing and shooting, because stand and shoot plus multiple shots means you're still hitting on 6s, so you can poison. But I just think you should go javelins and shields, and just never go blowpipes, because they're more expensive and they're kind of worse. Because of a lot of tournaments I've seen, they're like sort of run a rule of 3. So because a lot of units like gyrocopters or like things like dragon ogres can be spammed in their books, and people don't want that. So a lot of tournament organizers, at least in my local area, say you go rule of 3 to sort of mitigate that. And because in a Lizardman army you want like 6 or 7 or 8 units of these, so not getting to do that really nerfs us quite a bit. So I honestly think that in a rule of 3 tournament for core, it's really hard to run Lizardmen. We're not a great army when beginning with, so I would almost consider just playing something else if you have the opportunity to in a hard rule of 3 comp. I think Lizardmen can shine in comps where you can run like 5 or 6 units with these guys. I also think the upgrades you can build for them, Scout and Vanguard, is pretty good. In most scenarios, you start 24 inches away from each other, and because their threat range 24 inches, actually, if we have the first turn, all of our skinks cannot shoot, because even if you run them 12 inches straight to the enemy, you'll still be outside of 12 inches if your opponent like puts their guys a little bit behind the line, and a good opponent will do that. So that actually means that you want to go second with Lizardmen, and if you go scouting is still part of deployment, so you can give your opponent the +1, which you actually want, because you want to go second, because then your opponent go forward and then your skinks can shoot. So it's actually nice if your opponent goes forward. I think they're absolutely great. I think they're too cheap for what they bring, honestly. And I think the better you get at the game, the better your skink skirmishers become. So don't sleep on these guys. Just bring as many as you can. And if you think they're not great, you're probably just doing it wrong. The only real counter they have is magic missiles. Our guys really hate fireballs because it's 2d6 hits. They wound on 2s. And then you just have your armor save, but you're going to lose a lot of skinks to that. Normal shooting you can generally just ignore. You can just the -1 to hit from skirmishers they get is really nice, and it's really strong. But generally you you just want to bring them. The only way they really die is because of magic missiles. Another unit that's pretty decent right now are Chameleon skinks. They're basically 5 skinks. They have Blitzkill 4 with blowpipe, so they have a worse armor save, and they've got less wounds. And 5 of them cost 55 points instead of 10 skinks, which cost 50 points. So they're just a lot worse than skinks, and skinks are core as well, so you get to fill your core with that, which is absolutely amazing. But that these guys are 4x's, I think, just says about how strong skinks are. They're still a good unit. You can only make 2 units of a normal skink scout, and with Chameleon skinks you can get a third or a 4th unit of scout, which I think is pretty decent. The only thing they get is evasive, but because they're pretty short range, evasive is just kind of useless, and they cannot march and shoot, which makes them just kind of worse than the normal skinks. These are those skinks you will bring in rules of 3 tournaments, and I think that they're still kind of fine to get more scout units, but they're just normal skinks but worse. And then we go to Kroxigors. Kroxigors are pretty interesting datasheet. They are pretty expensive for what they bring. They have strength 7 great weapons with 3 attacks each. They're kind of slow with only movement 6 and no swift stride. They only have toughness 4 for some reason, which is the same as a normal Saurus Warrior. I don't really know how that happens. They're like a big monster, and like a Saurus Warrior is like an infantry guy, so I don't really see how they're as tough, but sadly they are. They're not toughness 5. They only have a 5 up armor save, so they die pretty quickly. The rule that they have is that they basically have chariot runners for skinks, so you can look through skinks and you can charge through skinks. But I haven't found out, because their movement is pretty slow, there's no real way to sort of make advantage of that. It's not like you can have like a skink line and then your Kroxigors behind that, and then have your opponent like not be able to move there, because then people often just charge for skinks and you don't really want that. So it just doesn't really work out. It's just not that relevant, I found, in games. But they're fine unit. They're not the worst one to bring. If you really want more strength 7 attacks, I guess you could take them, but I see no real reason why you won't want that. Jungle Swarms are the last core choice that I'm talking about. They're often crowded out because of skinks and because you have to take a unit of Saurus in core. They're like fine roadblocks. They have 360 degrees of vision, but there's they're just not stand out in any way. Then we go to really poor units. Salamander hunting packs used to be very strong in 8th edition, but now that template weapons, if you do not hit something fully, you need to roll a 4 up to get a hit. That makes them a lot worse. And you cannot march and shoot with this guy, so you can just move 6 inches and then you put down a flame template. So it's really hard to hit anything. So they're just too slow, and they can't really get anything done, sadly. You cannot stand and shoot with them either. It's just sad. Razordon hunting packs in some way are even worse. They have like D3 strength 4 hits with like pretty poor ballistic skill. They just don't do any damage, like D3 strength 4 hits for like a 75 unit model, really. They don't do anything in close combat. They don't do anything in shooting. They're just like bad, slow. Can't really think of any reason why you want to run these. Like if you compare these to like the 15 skinks they cost, it's like, wow, why would you ever want this when you compare it to like 15 skinks you can get out of your core? So just don't take them, they're bad. Cold Riders are also pretty lackluster. They lack any of the good cavalry rules. They do not have first charge, they don't have counter charge. They only have toughness 4 and a 3 up save, so no 2 up save, so that's annoying, and they're kind of expensive. You can bribe Drilled with them. Drilled's very strong, you probably want to do that, but they get even more expensive with Drilled. Their sort of selling point should be that the Riders have 2 attacks and the Cold One has 2 attacks. So you've got like a lot of like strength 4, strength 5, low AP attacks, which would be good against infantry, but as I said before, you do not really need to counter infantry because nobody is running infantry. So they feel like sort of an anti-infantry cavalry unit, which you don't really want to run. And then you remember that they also have stupidity on only leadership 8, leadership 9 if you have your Slann close, but it's pretty hard to keep them close because you want these guys in your flanks. So they're already a questionable and expensive unit to begin with, and then you notice, oh, they have stupidity, I have no way to reroll this, and probably in the turn you want them to charge, they're gonna fail their stupidity, do completely nothing. So it's bad. Do remind that Battle Standard Bearer or Cold-Blooded, it all doesn't give you rerolls on stupidity. The only thing you can make it better is be within 18 inches of your Slann to be in his leadership bubble to go to leadership 9. But even then, I mean, it's still unreliable and it's still pretty bad on a unit that's questionable to begin with. So really do not see a place for these guys, sadly. Then Terradons. Terradons are pretty decent. They're a fine unit. They have some good shooting and they're really good against other chaff. But in the Grand Army composition list, you need to take a Skink hero, so Skink Chief or Skink Priest, to be able to take them, which is pretty annoying because, as I said before, you want a Slann and 2 Carnosaurs, and running a Skink hero makes it so you cannot do that. So that's kind of sad. There is a cute trick you can do them. I call it Terra bombing. They have a special rule that says that whenever they, once per game, when they move over something, you can do D3 strength 4 hits to it, auto hitting, which can really kill solo wizards because they cannot take Lucas Surge against that because while you're flying over them, they're the closest model. And if you take a lore familiar and you go arcane urgency with a Slann, they have a movement of 10, so you can move them 40 inches and drop rocks, so do damage on something. So like solo wizards have to be more than 40 inches away from these guys to not get dropped by rocks. So that makes enemy wizards very scared. It makes it so they go into units, which is annoying for them. So that's kind of a nice strategy to keep enemy wizards honest and to keep like other flimsy units honest. Because if you have 4 or 5 of these guys, like, and they're all doing D3 strength 4 hits, yeah, they have no IP, but like other soft like skirmisher units are definitely dying to that. So you can totally do some damage like that. So they're a cute unit, but it's really annoying that you need to take a Skink hero unit because you take one. Ripperdactyls are kind of the same. They're like Terradons, but they do not have the shooting attacks. They're better in close combat. They're also held back by requiring a Skink hero, but they only toughness 3. They have like a 4-up save, but only 2 wounds, so they really die to a stiff breeze. They're like the Pack Knights at home, while Pack Knights are really tough and really strong. They are like just as expensive, but they have a toughness less and they have a worse save, so it really makes it so they die quickly. So I honestly think they're too expensive for what they bring, and they give annoying things in army list construction that you really cannot do much about. I think taking them decreases the power of the rest of your list. Next unit is normal Stegadons. I think you want to generally go ancient Stegadons because they're strength 6. As I said before, if you take an ancient Stegadon with the Engine of the Gods, it's 255 points. They're rare, so sadly, if you take 2 ancient Stegadons with Engine of the Gods, it's 510 points. So it's illegal because you can only do 500 for your rare. So if you want to take 2 Engines of the Gods, and you need to have 2 Engines of the Gods to have an additional +1 on your casting value, they're kind of mediocre. And you need to take one in your character allotment to be able to run them. You can also take them with giant blowpipes and a giant bow. Both are just kind of fine. I usually think of them as decent and anti-infantry monsters. And generally, I think you want to go an ancient Stegadon because all your impact hits and your stomps will go up to strength 6 instead of strength 5 a normal Stegadon has. And I think that's where the most of your damage is coming from. So when you take one, I probably would take an ancient. They're like a fine monster you can run. It's not great, but it's okay. Then up to another standout pick in the list, the Bastiladon with a solar engine. It's the best support monster we have. He has a 24-inch range, 3d3, strength 5, AP2 hit damage spell. 24 inches is really long. A lot of people are running a lot of knights, and if you can just shoot a lot of like these things into them, like if you shoot these things at Silverhounds, like they evaporate. It's really strong for like the 175 points they cost. Within 6 inches they give +1 initiative, which is like a nice bonus, but you have them for the shooting attack. They have a 3-up save, which is pretty nice, but only 4 wounds. So sadly, like great cannons and like some catapults do like D3 +1 wounds, so that makes it possible that you die to them. So when deploying them, really make sure they're not in range of enemy great cannons. They make it so they cannot see them, because if your opponent has turn 1, they're just going to get shot, and then you might just lose one for nothing. They are 24 inches and they only move 4 inches, so they're kind of hard to keep outside of dispel range. So try to keep mine on the flanks and use travel mystical pathways to like teleport them around to make it so they're like exactly within 24 of an enemy unit so they can shoot. You only have to see like the tiniest sliver of an enemy unit. Cover doesn't matter because they auto hit, which is nice, but you really want to be outside of 24 inches of your enemy. Because even though the 3d3 strength 5 AP2 hits are very, very good, they are only power level 2 bounce spells. You actually need a 9 to cast them. So you need to roll a 7 on 2 dice to actually just cast them. There's no way to improve that. So this unit is very much a test of how good are you at rolling a 7+ on 2 dice. You're like 56% chance to cast with these guys. Like and sometimes if you run like 2 of them, sometimes you get both of them off in the same turn, you do a ton of damage. Sometimes you just get none of them and you're very sad. So this unit is very much a test at how good are you at rolling 7 on 2 dice. And if you're within dispel range, your enemy probably has a level 4. They can roll on a 4, they get 2d6 plus 4, you only get 2d6 plus 2, so you're very likely getting dispelled. So it's really important to keep them outside of dispel range. And I found that travel mystical pathways from the elementalism lore is the best way to do that. Also, you can take him with an Art of Sokek. Don't do that; it's unplayable. We then go to one of the final monsters, the Troglodon. He's a strength 5, toughness 5 monster, which has a level 1 caster on it. You cannot take magic items on it. You get like an ability that gives extra attacks, which once per game on like a bad leadership test. It doesn't have Swift Stride. It has a 5-up armor save. It's very expensive. I honestly see absolutely no reason why you would run this. It dies to a stiff breeze. It has no good attacks. It's not fast. It is a bad ability. Being a level 1 caster is bad because if you're within range of a level 4, they will just dispel everything because you roll 2d6 plus 1, they roll 2d6 plus 4, and then you'll often be sad. Just don't run this. It's sadly just really bad. I have then gone over all the Lizardmen units. I will now go over the standout magic items in the army. As I said before, I've mentioned a few times, Glyph Necklace is I think the best army in the book. 5-up ward save on a monster and -2 magic resistance is really nice. You probably just go Talisman of Protection on your first Saurus Scar veteran, and then Glyph Necklace on the other one, and it's pretty good. Blade of Revered Tsunki, 65 points, makes it so you ignore all armor and ward saves, so somebody cannot take ward saves against it. In some metas, I think it might be good, but it's just sadly kind of worse than Ogre Blade, so it's not really something you want to take. The Piranha Blade is like a damage 2 weapon you can take on Skink Chiefs on Terras. I said it before, you can use it to hunt enemy wizards. It's kind of nice. You can maybe use it. It's not great, but for its points, it's a pretty efficient weapon. And the Cube of Darkness is an arcane item, which makes it so all the remains in play spells on the table are dispelled. There are some armies like Wood Elves that want to run like 4 Pillars of Flame and just send those at you. And bring a Cube of Darkness to counter that if you are afraid of Wood Elves. It might be pretty nice. So especially if you see a lot of Magic Vortex stem, it's like a really nice tool to have, and you could actually use it. So, what do I think about Lizardmen? Lizardmen are a middle to bottom tier army. We have no great answers to dragons. We cannot really build a very expensive dragon ourselves. The Oldbloods just isn't as tough or as strong as you can make a dragon. He goes up to like 450 points. You can give him like a 4 ward save and like some attacks, but like nothing like the 9 wound. Toughness 6, 2-up save, 5-up ward, 5-up regen. The other dragons do, and then the problem is that if they fight, the other guy wins, and then you're sad. So because we cannot go as hard on our mounted monsters other armies can, I think it's better to just go 2 and just go hunt other things and ignore the enemy dragons. But it still means that we just do not have a great answer against something like a star dragon, which makes it hard to play. I think undead matchups are the worst matchups for Lizardmen. They're really hard to play against. I think they're almost auto losers. What a lot of like Lizardmen play is about is like to use your 50 or 60 skinks to do a lot of chip damage, to like do 2 or 3 wounds, and then make it so they cannot charge your skinks and just run away, run around them, annoy them to shit. I think that works really well. And against undead you cannot use that because they will just heal whatever damage you do with your skinks, and then you're sad because the damage you do doesn't add up. Really what you want to do is like in 5 or 6 points is to like shoot with like 30 or 40 skinks a turn and just over time do enough damage to to do the to make it so you do the damage, but it doesn't work against undead because of the heals. So I think it's just a really hard matchup to win. I think if you build a list, you really want as much skink skirmish as you can. I think you want 2, maybe even 3 Bastiladon with solar engines. Archers do not exist. Do not talk to me about those things. And I think you want to go Carnosaurs, and I think those are your standout units. And I think you need your Slann for some support. As I said before, some local tournaments are doing like rule of 3 or like sort of max 1 behemoth like sort of comps to nerf dragons and stuff like that, and nerf like spam of units. It's really bad for Lizardmen. We're already a sort of struggling army. So if the event you're going through, like a tournament you're going to, has rules like that, I would really strongly reconsider playing another army, because it's really sucky for Lizardmen to have to play into that. Even though they're sort of middle bottom tier army, they're very satisfying to get right. They're kind of hard to play, but especially because you need to become good by skink skirmishers. There's a lot more I could say about that unit. Because they're very fun to get right, they're kind of very hard to get right. But if you do, I mean, they really reward you. At the end, I will use my time to show you 2 army lists that I have that I generally run. This is like the main list I run. As you see, I run 2 Saurus Scar veterans on gold ones with great weapons, 1 with the Armor of Meteoric Iron, Talisman of Protection, and 1 with a Glyph Necklace. So these are like your sledgehammer, you just run them in there and you do a lot of damage with them. And then I have a Slann Mage Priest with higher State of Mind, level 4, and a Lore Familiar. So he's really hard to kill because he's ethereal without any of the downsides. You can just fly them around anywhere and do what you want. And you see with this, you spend exactly 1,000 of the 1,000 points for character development. So this just shows how much you want to use as much of that character development as you can. Then you take skinks, lots of skinks. When you think you not have enough skinks, you take some more skinks, and then maybe you're fine. But then maybe you add in some more skinks just to be sure. And then in this list, I take 2 units of Chameleon skinks. Because skinks are good, you want more skinks. So this unit has 4 units of scouts. Which is kind of nice. And you take 2 Bastiladons to have some good shooting against knights, and you get to teleport those around with your Slann Mage Priest. So the idea of this list is just to have like 2 really strong hammers to keep your opponent honest, 2 Bastiladons as to have a fun shooting threat, and you just want to run away with your skinks, bounce around with your Bastiladons, and just annoy your opponent to death, and hopefully score enough points to be able to win the game. Another army you can go is, this is a double engine army. So as you see, I'm still running a Slann Mage Priest with higher State of Mind, level 4, and I'm running a Scar Veteran with Talisman of Protection and a Great Weapon. But here exactly you see the problem of running your second engine, because the Skink Priest at level 2 with an Engine of the Gods is already 345 points, and then you would only have 15 points in character allotment left if you get the Scar Veteran with the other stuff and the Slann Mage Priest. So you cannot go Lore Familiar with Slann Mage Priest if you want to, because if you roll shitty spells, there's no other great spells for you to turn into, so it's kind of annoying. And you do not have the points to get the Armor of Meteoric Iron, which is very good on the Scar Veteran on the Carnosaur, because he already has a 5-up armor save. So the downside of Meteoric Iron that you cannot improve your 5-up armor save is it's not really mitigated by anything. You can run this, and this gets +5 to cast on your Slann, which is nice, but you see you really have to give up a lot to run that Skink Priest. And for the rest, as you see, you just run a ton of Skinks, because you always run a ton of Skinks. Skinks are good. You run some Chameleons, because more Skinks is nice. A Bastiladon, and then your Ancient Stegadons to get your second Engine of the Gods. And this list is a little bit more of a castly list, so you have your Stegadons and your Slann with your Saurus Warriors in the center, and you're hopefully slinging a lot of magic from that to keep enemies honest, and to use the 2 fireballs you get from your Engine of the Gods to keep away enemy skirmishers. I think this is a fine, more shooty list, but I think that as a baseline, this list, if you can run 6 units of Skinks, is like your go-to. I hope you have enjoyed this pretty thorough deep dive into Lizardmen. As I've shown, I've sort of assumed that you know the basics of Lizardmen before you go into this, because I really wanted to go into some details here. I've been thinking a lot about the Old World lately. I find it a very fun and interesting game, and I think about putting up some videos to put up my thoughts about the game and see what people think about it. So if you like it, be sure to let me know, and I hope you have fun with this interesting and cool army. Maybe see you later.